Welcome back to the DGen Fantasy Football Podcast, where you get to be a degenerate fantasy nerd with us for the next hour and change. Make sure to like and subscribe below and hit the notification button to make sure you're one of the first to watch our weekly videos. I'll be honest, guys, we were ahead of the trend on players like Sam Laporta, Udi ADP. We called it out before I saw any other podcast call it out. Greg Dortch, for the second year in a row. Simon's been singing about the Dortch man for 3 years now. And Pat Fryermuth, who is skyrocketing up the draft boards, sleeper tight end of the year. So subscribe, get ahead of the game, win your fantasy league. With me tonight are the usual suspects. Dylan Raines rocking the Michael Vick jersey.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Michael Vick, legend. Simon McQuinn, Mark Fleming, and I'm Dan Schmader. Let's get into it. We're halfway through our divisional quest, where we review each team's QBs, running backs, receivers, and unfortunately the tight end position as well. Tonight we head back home, all East Coast boys, covering the NFC and AFC East divisions. Once again, and what I'm figuring out as we go through this is that each division are loaded with fantasy talent. It's just kind of figure out where you want to draft them, who you need as you go down the board. So NFC East, AFC East, chock full of fantasy talent. This one will be an important episode. But first, we have the news of the week.
Yeah, so the big news this week that everybody's been following closely, refreshing their feeds on Twitter every 5 minutes, is the Brandon Ayuk debacle. And I say debacle because it's been far from professional so far. It seemed like he was going to stay as soon as a week ago, but the last few days things have really picked up, and the rumors are flying around. Quite a few teams are interested in him, and apparently the Niners agreed to trade packages that both the Browns, which was including Amari Cooper and picks, and the Patriots, which was Kendrick Bourne and picks, they agreed to accept those offers if Ayuk's team could reach a deal with them. And in both cases, it seems that Ayuk wasn't able to reach an agreement. And the rumors are the Patriots offered him north of 32 million per year. And he said no.
Oh my God.
So I don't really know what he's looking for. We thought it was money at first, but I don't know if he wants to go to a contender. There's still talks of the Steelers being interested, but I don't know what their compensation looks like. I don't know what their pay scale looks like. I can't imagine anyone offers more money than the Patriots had already offered him. So, yeah, I don't really know where he's going to
Also,
wind up.
it's been so hard to tell what's true. Like I saw both of the trades you were talking about with Kendrick Bourne and Amari Cooper. And then today you see something about the Steelers, but 32 million a year and Ayuk says no. I mean, who knows what that guy wants, but I think it's safe to say he probably won't be on the Niners this season, right?
Yeah, Mark, what do you think as a Patriots fan? Having them offer him 32 and him say no.
I saw that report as well, and I mean, I just don't think he wants to play in New England. Like, it's probably a location thing
Yeah.
for some reason. I'm kind of going with. So I don't blame him. I get it, but 32 million, I was very surprised he declined that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in the next couple days we might see a resolution. At the same time, though, I think he might just be stuck on the Niners. I think for them, it makes the most sense to just keep him on his fifth-year option and make him play for 14 mil. But we'll keep close eyes on that. And then speaking of a wide receiver who did get paid, was Tyreek was putting up a little fuss about his contract since everyone's getting restructured, and his contract just got reworked. So now he's 90 million over the next 3 years with 65 million of it guaranteed. So that about locks them in for like 2 years at least, pretty much set with the 65 million guaranteed. And then after that year, they could probably move the contract around. So I wouldn't look at the 3 years, more so as the 65 million. So I think Waddle owners are a little bit upset by this. Everyone's kind of hoping Tyreek was almost done, but I think due to him having 9 million children, he's got to pay the dues. So
When I saw that contract, I felt the exact same
Yeah.
thing. couple years ago, he was like, "I'll retire when I'm 31,"
Yeah.
and then he probably had what 4 or 5 kids since then.
Yeah.
That's good for Tyreek. I wish this news had come sooner. We're not going to talk about dynasty tonight, but Tyreek as a dynasty pick seems a lot juicier now.
Yeah. And then another big contract, not very exciting, but Tristan Wirfs, the tackle for the Buccaneers, signed a 5-year, $140 million contract, locking up Baker's blind side. I think it's just a great deal to get an elite tackle there for 5 years. So hopefully that helps their line keep doing what they're doing down there. So, and switching over to some injuries at camp this week, some small nicks for some guys, but I think the most notable one so far is Josh Downs. He sprained his ankle earlier today, and it's looking like he'll miss at least a month. We don't really know his role in the offense, but everyone seems to think he's the number 2 guy on that team right now.
Yeah. It might be an interesting opportunity to. I don't recall what his ADP was prior to injury, but if you buy the injury dip on him or pick him up out of waivers post draft, that could be pretty nice because he was having a good camp prior to his ankle sprain. But this makes room for Alec Pierce, makes room for rookie AD Mitchell, and obviously, Pittman. We were all pretty high on prior, and this definitely takes that a step further.
Yeah. And then this week was also the beginning of some joint practices in the NFL. And what would joint practices be without a little bit of fighting? So Malik Neighbors got into a little scuffle with the Lions this week.
Dog.
It looked like he was the one who initiated it, which I kind of like to see. Total dog move. So
I got something to say on that real quick. He did do a little drive-by slap.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't as tough as it looked, but he initiated it.
Yeah. It was like a little like pop in the face. Like
It was like, haha, got you, and then ran away.
And then he ran off. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, both teams already got fined $200K, so they'll probably get chewed out by their own team. And then the Bengals got in a couple of fights this week, all inter-team fights. Nothing too crazy, just some linemen going at each other. So, and then the big fight was earlier today. Was DK took off his helmet and was swinging it. There's a clip of it if you look at it. Yeah, so
that's a DK thing to do. Wow.
Yeah, it was right behind like the inside the NFL reporting, and they're like, real mature DK.
Dude, the helmet swing is kind of like you're a dog if you fight like neighbors, but the swing of the helmet, like when Myles Garrett did that against Mason Rudolph, who no one cares about, that was still just a dirty.
Yeah, total weapon. Having a helmet just swinging around. And then
bad precedent for the kids.
Yeah. And then this last guy, he also had a fight break out with his team around him, kind of rallying against the defending team, was Justin Fields, who's been getting nearly all the first team reps with Russell Wilson being out. He woke up with a calf injury. I think myself is almost turning 30 now. I do that quite often, and Russell Wilson's similar age. He's getting old, so he hasn't been practicing, and Fields has been taking all the first team reps, and it's leading to a lot of speculation. So
that's huge. That's huge. Fields if he starts on the Steelers, like now this might be a hot take, but I could see top 5 QB upside.
Yeah. I think their defense is good enough where like he's gonna get the ball. So it's just an interesting take. I think Russ is going to be the starter, but it's not like he's a stud anymore.
Right. And they did bring Fields there with a plan.
Yeah.
With a plan. Because there was news that Artie Smith already liked Fields prior to that when he was still in Atlanta. And then Fields might go to Atlanta to be the head coach or be the quarterback there.
Yeah.
I think something's up. All right, so that's the news this week. Fortunately, not a whole lot of injuries. Just some guys getting nicked up, banged up, but should be all good for this season. Time to get divisional. So let's take us to the NFC East. We have the Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and the lowly Giants. Well, maybe not this year. We'll find out. But to kick us off, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles loaded with fantasy talent like they are every year. Last season, teams were riding Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, DeAndre Swift, this land. And then everything fell apart after the bye. I still haven't had a very good explanation as to what happened. But with Kellen Moore now there, I think this guy, our first person up, Jalen Hurts, is going to have a bounce back season. So Jalen's ADP right now, he's being drafted right around the 309, which is pretty good. He retained his value from last year, even though he probably lost a lot of people playoff runs. And with Kellen Moore there, and hopefully what's an improved passing scheme, he still has that top 3 upside with his rushing ability. And that feels like a risk I'm willing to take on him. Having one of those 2 or 3 elite QBs is such a game changer that despite last season, despite Saquon being there now and maybe taking some goal line work from him, ADP still feels right. Reports is that Jalen is finding his rhythm as a passer. But of course, we all know what the downside is for Jalen. And that is last season he had 15 rushing touchdowns, dominated. Not very efficient on the ground, but on goal line, he was absolutely electric. It was the 3rd straight year he eclipsed double digits. But if those red zone touches, goal line touches diminish due to the presence of Saquon and Jalen scores, 10 even, 10 or less, but it still justifies ADP. And again, under the Moore system, behind one of the best offensive lines in the league, his running capability, 2 stud receivers there, decent tight end, good running backs. I still think that 309 is worth the squeeze. Would you guys concur with that?
I agree. I love Jalen Hurts fantasy wise.
Yeah. People are coming back around on him. A few months ago, people were still kind of had a bad taste in their mouth, but I really think, if he's there, people going around him, it's still worth it.
I think if you have a late pick, like if you're in the back half of the draft and you can get A.J. Brown first round, and then it kind of works out perfectly to get Hurts in the 3rd round. So it's a nice little stack to combo.
Speaking of A.J. Brown, and just like Dylan's saying, his ADP is being drafted at the 108. So that's pretty viable. He was the wide receiver 5 last year and absolutely dominated middle of the season until he just was blown off the face of the earth. Even so, with those poor last 6 weeks or so, 106 receptions, nearly 160 targets, almost 1,500 yards, and only 7 touchdowns, but we know AJB is capable of a whole lot more. And again, I haven't really heard a good explanation as to what happened to the Eagles offense besides the lack of creativity with their head coach. But I really think they're going to figure it out under Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore offenses have produced in the past and have had receivers that are top dogs. Devontae Smith is also there. He's going at the 409, which I think is kind of a steal. Again, last year was a down year, but he has finished as a wide receiver 1 before 2 seasons ago. He did that on 136 targets. I really think he can get back up there this year. Last year he was down 112. But I think the 409, he's an interesting player with upside, and that's a pretty cheap price to pay for a guy that could finish as wide receiver 12, 11, 10. The other notable names on here are just waiver wire pickups to keep an eye out for. Some camp news has come out around Johnny Wilson. The man is a monster, and he might develop into a red zone threat. So keep that name in mind, especially if Devontae goes down. I would say A.J. Brown, but we know the man can't be injured. But Johnny Wilson's there. Running back is probably one of the more sound positions on the Eagles because we don't project injuries, but Saquon is there. They paid him ADP of 203, and he's running behind the best offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in football. He got the contract, checks a lot of boxes for Quan being a productive player. But again, there's the age, there's the injury history, and yet he's still one of the very few bell cows in the league, and hopefully playing for a punishing offense. So the opportunity should be there. He should pace the league with rushing opportunities, receptions out of the backfield. And also in that round, the second round is risky as it is. You have Drake London going there, Devontae Adams still, Chris Olave, Sam Laporta, we've talked about a lot, Ayuk. Like, there's a lot of risk in that round anyways. So if you go receiver first, Saquon might be a good snag in the second. Are you guys in or out on Saquon? At the 203.
I'm out just due to just for some reason the injury bug and him scare me too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't shake that feeling.
I can see myself taking him there. But I don't know if I would feel as confident as picking like Kyron Williams, who's going right around him. So
yeah, who has injury concerns of his own, but
yeah,
I agree. If you can get past his history and look at the good things on the Eagles, he might be a good anchor running back for you.
Yeah.
And to round things off, Dallas Goedert is the tight end for the Eagles. He's going at 9-11. There was once a time when I would have championed Dallas Goedert. Part of me still wants to believe in old Dally, but I'm afraid that there are better values to be had than Dallas at the 9-11. Look for Freiermuth, look for Komet, Dalton Schultz, of similar production, almost guaranteed. Even with what's going on with Chicago, and save the 9th for a higher upside receiver, one of those later round running backs that are looking pretty tasty, and wait until a later round to go for a tight end.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we got the Dallas Cowboys, who are perennially one of the most frustrating teams to ever root for in the NFL. I think every year the script is the exact same for the Cowboys. It's is this the year they finally pull it together? Last year they lose to the wagon of Jordan Love and the Packers in the first round of the playoffs, and they're bounced. But the good thing is this is fantasy football. We don't care about the postseason here. So last year they finished at 12-5, and they were the number one scoring offense in the NFL. And a big part of that scoring offense is obviously their QB, Dak Prescott. He's currently QB 8 off the board. He's going at pick 74, so beginning of the 7th round. I think he is definite for top 5 upside. Definitely could finish top 3. Wouldn't be surprised with that. Pretty much every year in his career, he hasn't been injured. He's top 10 with top 5 upside. And then they have a little bit of a re-roll here at running backs this year. We got a Zeke who was brought in, and then the other big piece, I suppose, is Rico Dowdle. I mean, I know Zeke's old. He's 29. I touched on him in our last video with Dan and I. I think he's a running back that you should try and leave every fantasy draft with on your team. He's going late enough where it's not, you don't have him to rely on him as a starter, but the offense is top 5 projected once again. They're going to score a lot of points. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. And then if you can't get Zeke, I think Rico is an okay compensation. He's going 3 rounds later at pick 145, but I think he's still going to get a piece of the pie there. And then that brings us to the wide
question about Zeke.
Yeah.
Would you reach on him a little bit? So he's like mid 9th round. Is he worth it taking in the 8th? Or there's other, like Jalen Warren's going in the 8th. I think Javonte is kind of falling a little bit, getting there. Would you take him over those kind of guys?
Yeah, I'd take him over both of them.
Me too.
Warren and Javonte?
Yeah. So, I'd take him a round or 2 early. I could see him taking it back into the 8th.
Okay.
Especially if you go for a hero RB build, and you get one guy early like Brees, Gibbs, JT, whoever, and then you backfill with guys like Zeke. I can see that being a great strategy this year.
I love
We're
it.
gonna see some vintage,
Zeke's awesome.
vintage Zeke this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, the past 3 years, the Cowboys running backs have averaged a total yardage of over 2,000 yards combined rushing and receiving. So I don't know if it's going to be necessarily there, but it's got to be close to that. So, and then they have the high of CD in their wide receiver room, and then it's just pure garbage otherwise. So, I mean, CD, he's going ADP pick 2 right now. Some people definitely taking him at pick 1. I think he's a for sure lock to a top 3 pick in almost every single draft. I think some people might take Tyreek over him, but that's just like a flavor thing. So, absolute dog. Last year, he led fantasy in every single stat. He was the most winning championship roster player last year in fantasy. I think if you're a top pick, and he's there, you have to take him. Outside of him, though, we got Brandon Cooks somehow still there, somehow still the wide receiver too. I wouldn't get too excited about him. And then we got a couple no-name rookies coming in, and second-year guys, Jalen Brooks, Jalen Tolbert, and Ryan Flournoy. They're all going super, super late, so not even worth a dart throw in your draft. And then who we think is going to get the second most targets on the team is the tight end, Jake Ferguson.
Best.
Yeah, he's young. He had a good year last year. He led the NFL in tight end red zone targets with 24. So that shows Dak trusts him. I think he's going to have an uptick in touchdowns this year, as well as total targets, especially with no one being brought in wide receiver wise. I think he's the clear cut second target on that team, and he's going at pick 87. So much later than all the other tight ends who are being bolstered up the rankings this year. So I love targeting him in drafts.
I do. I love Ferguson, but I was thinking about this the other day because we keep hearing the stat about most red zone targets in the league.
Yeah.
But he only caught 5 touchdowns. So while it could be saying like, oh, look at all this upside for Jake Ferguson, he's getting red zone targets. The other way to look at it is he not talented enough to haul in all these red zone targets? That being said, his ADP is absolutely delicious, and it's totally worth finding out while he's on your team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just good to show that Dak trusts him. Usually these guys go to who they trust in the red zone, especially because they know they can score and they don't want to fuck things up. So, and then behind him is just garbage and Shoemaker, second-year player. Didn't really show much. He's got a fun name though, and that's about it. I got on the Cowboys. I'd expect them to have a very similar season to last year. I think last year they started trying to establish their team through the run. And then, if you remember, they had their bye week and everything switched to the CD Lamb show. And I think that's what this year looks like from the get go is the CD Lamb hyper targeting. So,
Yeah. All right, we come to the fun Commanders, who probably don't have a shot in this division because the Eagles and the Cowboys are just I think they're always going to be kind of at the top. They're coming in with a rookie QB that has a lot of unknowns. He dominated in college, but it remains a question if it's going to translate to the NFL. Jaden Daniels, I'd say the one positive outlook that they could run their offense through is he did have over 3,000 rushing yards in college. It's a completely different game in the NFL, but I mean, I imagine they're going to take advantage of that, which kind of brings you to their running back duo, which I wanted to ask you guys if you're at all surprised by the ADP of Eckler compared to Robinson.
I'm not surprised. I'm not sure if I agree with it. I like Robinson a lot, but Eckler was a first-round draft pick last year, so he's plummeted quite a bit. But I'm not surprised that he's a round or half a round before E-Rob.
I have a hard time believing that Eckler deserves to fall as hard as he is. I think he had the ankle sprain last year, and I think he just never fully got over it, and he was just kind of forced to play, which I get doing, but I don't think. I mean, everyone remembers that one clip of him taking off at 12 miles per hour down the field and getting caught. I don't think that's who he is this year. So I'm not saying he's going to be the old Eckler, but I think he's closer to that than a washed up bucket.
Yeah, I can definitely understand it. I like Robinson a lot, but I mean Eckler did only have 100 less total yards than Robinson last year, with like I guess you could say one of Eckler's worst years, which is still kind of crazy. He's going to always have that receiving upside. He's always been elite with that. But I do like Robinson. He gets a decent amount of touchdowns, 9 touchdowns last season, which is pretty good for your RB1. And I expect Dan Quinn to run that offense through the running backs. He kind of had a similar situation in Atlanta when he was there. Obviously, more elite wide receiver talent, which kind of brings me to the very mid wide receiver room. I love me some Scary Terry, but I think his projection of 1,000 yards again is pretty accurate. I don't see him. I don't see a reason where he's going to end up with 1,200 or 1,300. He also struggles with like touchdowns. He's never had crazy touchdown numbers. So I don't know. ADP of 67. I guess I like it, but I don't know. Even as a McLaurin truther, I think it's somewhat high. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
guys think?
I've kind of cooled off on Terry when Jaden got drafted there, and Jaden does have arm strength. He's got passing talent, and people immediately assumed, Terry at age 27 or 28, whatever he is, would kind of step up, like have a DJ Moore type of year from last year. But I think it's far more likely that Jaden gets a lot of rushing yards, and then I don't really remember what the Cardinals' offense was like when their offensive coordinator, help me out here, what's his name?
Kingsbury,
Kingsbury.
Cliff
Kingsbury
Kingsbury.
was there. And I don't remember them dumping it off to the running back a whole lot. Like, I don't think James Conner, I think Conner had a lot of rushing touchdowns,
Yeah.
but didn't really have a whole lot of receptions. So I think it's going to be centered on the run, centered on Jaden. And Terry will probably have a very Terry type of season.
Yeah, he's like the great value Mike Evans. He hits that 1,000-yard mark just barely, but it's not exciting in any way.
Yeah. And then Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson is Jahan Dotson. The ADP of 152 is perfect for him. I don't think anyone has any evidence of him jumping up in rankings this year or any, gaining any steam in that category. So I think once again, Commanders, it goes back to the running backs. I guess one exciting part of it would be their tight end room. I think it's kind of being overlooked. Zach Ertz is ADP of 246, so people have completely written him off because of age. And I mean, his production over the past couple of years has gone down quite a bit from what he used to be. They drafted the second tight end off the board in the draft, Ben Sinnott. His ADP is 160, so it seems like people are really expecting him to be the guy. And Sinnott was actually pretty good. He had 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, which is pretty good for a college tight end, not named Brock Bowers. So, I'd say the highlights of the team, probably the running backs, seeing what Jaden Daniels can do in the NFL with that rushing upside, if that offensive line can hold up, which we've not seen that happen the past couple of years. And then seeing if that rookie tight end can do anything for them. But overall, I see them still at probably the bottom with the Giants.
Basement. I like Ben Sinnott, though. It's an interesting pick, and he's super late.
Yep.
And it's worth saying that when Ertz was in this system in Arizona, he did get a lot of work.
Yeah.
So Sinnott might be a nice little sleeper guy.
Yeah.
Brings us right to the Giants. Danny Dimes. This could be the year that he has a year, I'd say. His ADP's basically undraftable, 235. I think if I do my math correctly, that is undraftable.
Yeah.
Drew Lock, 550 ADP, even worse. Quarterback situation is the quarterback situation. I do think Daniel Jones, if he's going to have a year, this would be the year. Devin Singletary, ADP 65. How do you guys feel about that?
Boys.
I like it.
I kind of like Singletary this year. I know Simon's kind of a big Singletary truther, so I'll let
Yeah.
him speak on
Yeah.
this though.
No, I like Singletary. I think there's been a lot of like joke posts about comparing Singletary and Barkley's career. I think there's
Seems
definitely there's less similarities to them, but I guess some of like the advanced stats show that they're actually pretty similar, and Singletary actually beats out Saquon in certain categories. But I think it's a good replacement for Saquon, and Singletary's proven over the past couple of years that he can be a consistent back. So I like that for a team that I guess you could call it rebuilding. I mean, they've been rebuilding for a while now, but yeah, they upgraded their offensive line a bit, so we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, Singletary is just another running back that's going in later rounds that will help you either if you do an anchor RB draft or you just totally punt the position. I mean, there's some talent there, and he's proven last year on the Texans he was second string behind Damon Pierce, who everyone was all over, and then he's just an efficient, good running back who also can pass pro. So Tyrone Tracy's there, but I really think Singletary is going to be kind of a steal.
I think people are high too because of that coaching connection of when he was in Buffalo with Dable. So we'll see.
Abes.
What did he sign there, Singletary? Did he sign 1 year?
No, it was multiple years.
I thought it was like 3 for 10 or like 3 for 12, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't crazy money, but it was definitely like decent for him. 3 years, 16 mil, so 5.3 per.
That's pretty
I think that's a
legit
good
for-
deal for him.
Yeah.
When I see his name, for some reason, I just assume they're just going to run him into the ground this season for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing I can think
Sacrificial
about.
lamb.
Yeah. That brings us over to probably one of the most exciting prospects of the draft, if not the most exciting. Malik Neighbors, ADP 40. I think he's a beast, man. I mean, all the reports are showing that he has he could be a top 20 fantasy guy first year. And I could see it. I mean, and that's what I was saying about Danny Dimes. I mean, who knows? I mean, sometimes you just need a good wide receiver. Like, you just need some juice, some aura, something. You know what I mean? And like, I think between Neighbors bringing in Singletary, I mean, there's some new guys over there, and I don't know. I mean, I like Malik Neighbors. I'm excited to see him play in the NFL.
Yeah. And it could like rejuvenate that wide receiver room, kind of get like Jalen Hyatt going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you kind of build that room of like thinking you're all dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wandale Robinson too. His ADP is 211. I think he finished, if I remember, wide receiver 53 last year, which is like I kind of surprised me because I don't remember hearing much about Wandale Robinson, but I mean I've heard a lot of. Last year was his rookie year, right?
Yeah, and he had a lot of good PPR value last year.
Yeah.
And I got him up there.
And that brings us to the tight end room: Danny Belanger and Theo Johnson. I do like Danny Belanger. I like the up. I think. I mean, there needs to be a guy there. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be some tight end to step up. So I mean, I'm thinking it's going to be Danny Belanger.
Yeah,
I think that's a good call, just because he's like more of that. But Theo Johnson is also like he's kind of in that Ben Sinnott territory. I believe he went to Penn State and had a good career there. And you know he's obviously going to be a waiver guy at some point, but he's another guy to keep your eye on. But Bellinger a couple years ago was involved in the passing game prior to he who must not be named moving there, Aaron Waller. So I like that take. Aaron Waller is a weirdo. He's a weirdo. All right, so who you guys got for this division? We kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm going Eagles again. And then it seems pretty clear cut. Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders, Giants.
I got Giants
So-
third.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
Okay, that's easy.
I think
Yeah.
their defense is going to be kind of nutty this year. They brought in a lot of players, but yeah, I also don't really have faith in Jaden Daniels as an NFL quarterback as part of that. And I think also Neighbors, he's the most exciting player between the Giants and the Commanders out of like everyone on both teams. So I think Neighbors just kind of gives a little boost for me. So, but I think the Commanders' whole team is way more of a dumpster than the Giants' offense is, which is pretty terrible.
Yeah, I probably got it going right down in order. Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. I'm gonna go Giants third, strictly for Malik Neighbors purposes.
Yeah, I'd go the same way.
But
Neighbors does really add something to it, huh? And like Mark, you were saying, sometimes all it takes to push that Josh Allen to the next phase is that Stephon Diggs, Jalen Hurts
Yep.
with AJ Brown and Devontae. We've seen it time and time again. Danny Jones is clearly like athletic enough to be on an NFL football field, but he just hasn't had any receiver help in those years. I mean, name me a Giants receiver who was like a stud since DJ's been in New York.
Yeah, it's been
You know,
horrible.
yeah,
They tried to bring in an absolute dud. What was that guy's name from the Lions?
Oh yeah,
Kenny
he
G.
flopped.
Kenny Galladay, terrible.
Yeah.
And they brought in Darren Waller, terrible. So this will be Danny's year to prove it. And luckily, Malik is just an absolutely epic player.
I'm gonna say one thing on the Giants. Like I know they beat my Patriots twice in the Super Bowl, but I am pulling for the Giants moving forward. Like I
Yeah.
want to see them win. I want to see Danny Dimes do good. I don't know why.
I do too, Mark.
You know what I mean?
You
It
guys
feels
watch
like-
Hard Knocks?
I watched a little bit.
Yeah.
Of it, I gotta
Yeah.
continue it, but Daniel
can't
Jones
watch
is
that
just
show.
he's fast, he's tall, he's goofy. I love that. I
He
hope
actually
he's
has
perfect.
rushing upside, which is wild to
does.
think about.
the one year he had a good fantasy finish was due to his rushing. I think he ran for
700
like
yards.
700 yards. Yeah,
700
Yeah.
yards. It's like Lamar Jackson here.
Yeah.
you heard it here
He's
first.
good.
Danny Jones, the next Lamar.
There you go.
Lock-
He's already been Lamar.
He-
He's actually he could put up similar to like that 3,200, 3,400 passing yards with 500 to 600 rushing yards in there.
Yeah,
Their whole success is going to depend on that line. That's been Danny Dimes' kryptonite for his whole career so far.
yeah.
All right, moving to another conference, but in the same city of Gotham, New York Jets. Ah, the Jets. Okay, so we all know Aaron Rodgers deal. Got hurt last year. He came back. Now he's being drafted at the 12-8. And I really think and there's some fantasy players on this team, like some really important pieces. And I really think, with the exception of the running back, Rodgers' play kind of determines the fate of these fantasy relevant guys on their team. But in terms of where you should draft Rodgers, you should draft Rodgers like Stafford. I still think he's a good player to snag late. If you take a risk with like just a pocket passer earlier on, or you get someone like a Jaden Daniels where you're not sure, or someone if you took AR-15 who's going to be stellar, but with his injury history and just this limited window, it would be nice to have a Rodgers or a Stafford there, Kirk Cousins. But I do think the days of Rodgers being an MVP are behind us, yet he could still be a very serviceable quarterback and leader within the real life game of football. But I don't see him. I see him more as like a elite game manager, and they have a good defense. They'll control the line of scrimmage with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. So I think I wouldn't count on him to be your weekly starter. The running backs are what's most exciting about this. Breece Hall is going at the 109, and he's coming off the RB2, second overall RB in PPR last year. And that was his first season back from a pretty devastating knee injury. So it's well known that players kind of need a year after injury is not always going to be show who they are. They need a full year under their belt. He did that. He took that year and was the RB2. So Brees either didn't need that year in between, or that was him still not 100% being the RB2. He's 5'11", 220, he's fast as balls, and I think he's absolutely a lock pick if running backs we were going for in the first round. And he's my second overall RB on the year. So, yes, Aaron Rodgers is a question mark, but Brees absolutely dominated with trash quarterback play last year, caught a lot of passes from them. Classic anchor RB, and I'm totally down to draft him. Are you guys in on Brees? I know maybe we don't want to draft an RB in the first round, but what do you think?
Yeah, I also have Brees as my RB2 behind CMC. I think I take him much more in redraft over Bijan or Gibbs.
Yep. Definitely over Gibbs, I think. And then I think it just comes down to your flavor, whether it's a Bijan or a Brees Hall.
Yeah.
This guy is probably the most controversial. So Garrett Wilson, he's going at 201 right now. We talked a little bit about it when I went over the Eagles, but with Saquon about the second round. So he's going before Olave, London, Devontae, but they're all kind of in a similar territory. They had QB issues in the past. They either got a step up at quarterback, and now we are all kind of subjectively assuming that there's going to be a better year ahead with enhanced QB play and just a generally improved offense. Even with the elder Raj, Garrett Wilson should live up to those expectations. And that is solely because I really think he's going to receive a Devontae Adams level of targets, 170, 175. We've seen Raj do that with receivers for the last 15 years. So it's not out of question that he does do that. And if he does get that 170, I think he lives up to that ADP. The question is touchdowns, red zone looks. So, and I don't really want to project that. I think I wouldn't expect him to go for double-digit touchdowns, but he's a big play machine, and I think he's just as likely to take a third-year leap as an Olave, as a Drake London, and even more so. There are other receiver to talk about is Mike Williams. He's kind of the forgotten man. He was on the Chargers for years. I don't really want to sleep on Mike Williams. He's going at 12:01. He's going so late. I mean, that's like defense kicker territory. But and I don't want to sleep on him. He's produced 1,000-yard seasons many times before. He's caught touchdowns. Given his age, his injury history, the makeup of the team, I just doubt that we see like a really fantasy relevant year from Mike. But he could be a valuable bench piece to be used as like a streamer situation. And then a couple other guys, Malachi Corley, Alan Lazard. Just keep an eye on Corley. Scouts really liked him coming out of college, what he brought. He's smaller, fast, shifty, and I think he could be used to kind of like by the team to scheme up ways to get him touches like Curtis Samuel we saw in the past or Jaden Reed last year. Just a cool little gadget guy. And then to round off the Jets offense, Tyler Conklin is still their starting tight end. And honestly, he's going round 15, so he's not probably being drafted in a lot of drafts. He might be worth a late round flyer or an early waiver pickup. He's produced to the tight end position for years, and he's cheap, and he could still be a big part of this passing game. I wouldn't say he has like sleeper tight end one upside, but we all know that in week 10 of our fantasy season, you're just desperate for that serviceable tight end. You find yourself starting Cade Otton or some other bum second string tight end. So consider Conklin. I think he's still going to be a part of the team.
Thanks, Dan. Moving on next, we got the Buffalo Bills. And everyone's saying that the Bills are starting a mini rebuild this year. It might not be as good towards the bottom of the division, but for me, as long as they have Josh Allen, I think they're contenders. I mean, Josh is such a stud fantasy football wise. He's very polarizing to watch, though. I know some of us have experienced owning Josh Allen in a league and watching him play. makes some boneheaded decisions, but more often than not, it always works out. So this year he's going, I think it is the highest ADP he's ever gone. It's 22, higher than any QB last year as well. So he's in the back end of the second round. He's the QB1 overall. I mean, the last 4 years he's been QB1 3 times and QB2 the other time. So just such a stud. If you want Josh Allen, though, you got to pick him early. So, and then moving on to their running back room, James Cook. Last year, James Cook exploded in the second half of the year. Once they made the OC change there, he was really like the main focal point of the offense, taking most of the carries, lots of check down targets, scoring quite a few times. So I think he's another interesting player. His ADP is getting a little high. He's going in the middle of the 4th round right now. So I don't know if that's necessary.
Yeah, how do you guys feel about James? When we were doing mocks, I made sure I ended up with James Cook in like every mock draft I did. And then for whatever reason, I kind of faded him because I didn't think he'd get the touchdowns he needed. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good things going on for James Cook in this offense right now.
Yeah, he's going pretty high. So I don't know if I necessarily want to take him, but I think one of the things on this offense that makes me like James Cook is there's not a lot of options in the wide receiver room. So I think he's one of like the 3 familiar guys to Josh on this team. So I think if you have a team built where you need a running back in the 4th round, I can see James Cook being your guy and him having low end RB1 upside for sure.
Right, just through like PPR machine.
Yeah. And then the rookie they brought in this year is Ray Davis. He's a little bit older of a rookie. He's already 24, so he's a little bit bigger of a guy. He could take some goal line carries. We don't really know what that's going to look like, though. But he is older, so he should be ready to go right into the system and start playing. So he could pose a threat, but I wouldn't worry too much about him as a day 3 pick. And then the wide receiver room is, I think what everybody wants to know is who is the number 1 here. And I think I've seen arguments for 3 different guys to be the number 1, even 4, with some people having dart throws on Chase Claypool. I wouldn't worry about Claypool, though. He's a total bum. But it's Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, and Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman's going the highest at ADP. He's picked 96. Then Samuel's 119, Shakir 128. So they're all very close in ADP. I think this one's kind of like how you wanted to decipher it. I mean, Samuel's been in the league for 7 years. He's never really shown anything, but the one year he did show anything, it was under the same OC. And then Shakir's the only familiarity with Josh. Josh has been talking him up in camp a lot. We'll kind of see where that goes. And then Keon's the young stud, very high draft capital. Then again, though, he needs to work on his route running coming into the league. He was looked at it kind of as a project prospect. He needs to work on a few things before ascending. Fun fact, he is CeeDee Lamb's cousin, so maybe he's just the same player as CeeDee Lamb. You never know.
What?
Okay,
can we just talk about this receiver room for a second? Which one of these guys like plays on the line as the X receiver? I thought Shakir is like off the line slot guy. Like he couldn't possibly be the wide receiver 1 there.
I mean, it could be a slot guy as the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, but as like their dominator off the line, I mean, it's got to be Keon, right, with his size.
There's a lot of talk about Keon becoming that.
Yeah, I just think Keon. I think Keon you draft with the intentions of him being good in the second half of the season in your playoff run. I mean, he's the one with the size. He's 6'4", I think 220 pounds. Like he's a big boy. So he definitely fits that type versus Curtis Samuel and Shakir are both smaller, more like quick guys. But you definitely have to know it's not going to be an instant return. But I think his ADP reflects that very well, being the end of the 8th round. That's not so.
Who could become
Yeah.
just the go-to guy. That's a discount.
Yeah, especially
I think Keon. Yeah.
especially tied to Josh. So
Yep.
And then
I think Keon's like one of the most exciting prospects.
yeah. And then the other guy who's definitely a big target on the team is their tight end, Dalton Kincaid. He's going very start of the 5th round, ADP 49. He's the 5th tight end taken off the board. I think everybody thinks that Kincaid is going to be an absolute stud this year, and I think all things point to it. I don't think Dawson Knox is going to screw with his playing time much anymore. So, yeah, I think Kincaid is someone you should definitely target in your leagues.
I
I
waver.
like Kincaid a lot.
Yeah.
But like you said, though, the simplest answer is like it's not Keon, it's not Curtis and Shakir. It's Kincaid and the rest of those guys. Like, and then Cook out of the backfield and the rest of those guys just doing their job.
Yeah.
I will say my hot take was Curtis Samuel, top 20 receiver this year, wide receiver 1 there. I'm still sticking with it. I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to roll with it.
Hey, he's
I
having a
like
good
it, Mark.
camp. Yeah, he's having a good camp.
I like it. Brings us to the Dolphins. I think they're going to be the same old Dolphins. Most exciting offense in the league. Blow up in the playoffs. I think Tua, he has an ADP of 105, which I think is a steal. He finished as QB 9 last year, had almost 4,700 total yards.
Led the league.
Yeah, with those two weapons at wide receiver and then that running back duo, he can just push the ball. So you're always going to have those yards with him. The running backs are, I think, most exciting, but they do have downside. I think A-Chain is being very overvalued, but his stats were extremely impressive last year. The him and Mostert, they combined for almost 2,000 yards, and I think almost 32 touchdowns total. So they were it was like a machine with the two of them. It's impressive what Mostert still does, especially at the goal line. And I think people are excited about A-Chain just because of how fast, shifty, and how they've been able to integrate him into the offense that quickly. And with that small of a sample size, having that production is huge especially for redraft. And then I'd say the most exciting part of this team is the wide receivers. Tyreek, 1,700 yards last year. I imagine it'll probably go up from there. I think he could easily finish as wide receiver 1 this season. And then Jalen Waddle, I think he snuck under the radar for a lot of people for the past couple of years. But I don't have like evidence to back it up, but I could see him finishing as like a top 10 wide receiver. That's like my hot take.
That's the vibe right now. For
He,
sure.
he did a couple years ago, so I don't think
Yeah.
it's too wild.
Yeah. And I think there's always been like a status around him of that he's always injured, but if you actually look at it, he's really, comparatively to like a lot of players, he's not actually injured that often. But yeah, I think the Dolphins with those four weapons, I mean, I think they're just gonna do the same thing as every year, have a great record into the playoffs, and then something blows up on them. And the tight ends are probably the least impressive, like in the league, in my opinion. They got Jonnu Smith at ADP of 208, and then Durham Smythe at ADP of almost 400. So but at the same time, that team they don't really need, if they can get some blocking and Jonnu Smith catching a touchdown here and there in the end zone, they're fine with that. I think they have the luxury of not needing a flashy tight end when you have 4 flashy guys on offense with Tua putting up those numbers. I think the Dolphins will be exciting again, but I don't know. What do you guys think about for A-Chain and Waddle in terms of their projections?
I'm scared of HN. I'm just not sure if the volume will be there. I mean, his efficiency is off the charts and probably will happen again. Waddle, I'm really heating up to. I think that's a pretty solid. What is he? Third round pick.
Yeah, 33.
Yeah, 33. I mean, that's pretty legit. One thing I wanted to say though is like if I see one more running back who's 6th round and beyond, I'm gonna be fully bought into the 0 RB drafting this year. Raheem Mostert, I don't think he puts up 20 touchdowns again, but for a mid 6th, early 7th round pick, if he continues to climb, maybe I'll back off. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
looking pretty legit.
Yeah, I agree. I think A-Chain's much too rich at the end of the 2nd round. I'd be happy maybe taking him towards the end of the 3rd round with the risk built into it. But end of the 2nd's much too early for me. And I still love Mostert. I know he's
Yeah.
getting older, but he still has like less than 1,000 touches in the league compared
Yeah.
to like Derrick Henry, who's 2 years younger than him. Derrick Henry has 3,000 plus career touches. So it's just, there is not much mileage on Mostert.
The
and
coach loves him.
Yeah,
loves.
McDaniel
Yeah.
loves him. I mean, Mostert's still so fast, great runner. So I think he finishes above A-Chain again. And I think A-Chain's ADP is way too high. Waddle's interesting for me. I like Waddle, but it's hard to know when he's the second fiddle on the offense to Tyreek. Plus that running back room, it's just there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. So I think he has a much more similar year though to his first 2 years in the league, where he finished at wide receiver 13 and 8, compared to last year where he missed 3 games and had some part-time games with some injuries, leaving early. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
the running back room is the most interesting. I kind of forgot to mention rookie Jalen Wright. I think people are overvaluing how much time he might actually get, if any, this season. I think it depends on injuries. They still have Jeff Wilson. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the Jalen Waddle hot take that's a pretty big reach, because that means Tua is going to be supporting 2 extremely ball dominant wide receivers.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say kind of like what Dylan was saying. I don't really like A-Chain. I think he's just small. For some reason, I think he's gonna. I don't. It's just he's a small back, a lot of wear and tear. And I think having Mozart there, especially doing what he did last year, he was just a fucking monster last year.
Yeah.
So, going late again, if he could do what he did last year again, I mean, like Dan was saying, like going for guys like that. And then Tyreek Hill and Waddle, it sucks because I have Waddle, so I like want to be more up on him, and I am up on him. But it just sucks having Tyreek as the one there. It's Tyreek's Tyreek, so we'll see what happens. I do love
Yeah.
I do love me some Jalen Waddle, but Tyreek is just
Generational.
it's tough.
Generational.
And that brings us to the Patriots. Well, I don't think you're going to see a lot of fantasy relevant Patriots this year, especially not at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, Drake May. I don't know who's going to start. I assume I think it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, and I assume we'll see Drake May in there at some point. But their ADP is not like Jacoby Brissett's 643, and Drake May is 214. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of them in redraft. That brings us to Ramondre Stevenson, ADP 70. I like Ramondre a lot. I've been, a couple of years ago when it was him and Devin Harris. I think Ramondre is going to be. I think he's in for a big year this year. He just signed that deal, and I think given the unknowns of the offense and all the new things in that offense, I think they're going to turn to Ramondre a lot. So I like Ramondre a lot. And then they brought in Antonio Gibson this year, which, you know, Antonio Gibson.
Beast.
He's a big yeah, and then this is the most exciting part of this team for me is the wide receiver room. Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, KJ Osborne. I hope they drop Juju Smith-Schuster. But Demario Douglas, ADP 182, Polk 166, and Javon Baker 227. So I don't think any of these three are going to make their way into like a starting lineup in a redraft league this year. I hope they do, but I don't know who. Javon Baker's been getting a lot of hype in training camp. Every day I feel like I see something new on him just doing something like electric, and he seems to have the personality. So I'm really hoping he can be a big name for the Pats. And Jalen Polk, I like Jalen Polk a lot.
Yep.
He I've just seen reports on like not even football related things that I've seen about him that I like him. I'm bought in on him. So I'm really hoping that they do something with him as well. And Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas, he's a beast. So I'm excited to see what they do with him. They brought in KJ Osborne. Juju Smith Schuster's unknown. And then it brings us to tight end. I love Hunter Henry. I think he's just, maybe not fantasy wise, ADP 180. But in real life, I think he's a solid tight end to have. Yeah, I love. I think he signed this offseason. Did he sign this offseason? Am I
Yeah.
tripping?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he signed a
did.
3-year deal for decent money.
Yep, and then they brought in Austin Hooper as well. So I don't know if he's going to kind of. I mean, they used John Smith recently last year, and
2
who
years
knows?
ago.
I
It
mean,
was 2
2
years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yep. So who is their backup? Who was their tight end last year with Hunter? Oh, Mike Gesicki. Yeah,
Mike Gesicki.
the Gritty King. So we'll see what happens. I don't anticipate a huge fantasy. The Patriots are never like that. I'm excited for Drake May and some of the young wide receivers for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the wide receivers are exciting. Javon Baker's extremely exciting, but I think Jalen Polk is probably the most polished. I mean, he had almost 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns in college on a stacked offense,
Yeah.
and he does look pretty polished out of camp right now. But yeah, I think like you said, Mark, especially for redraft, I don't think these guys are maybe sitting on a bench, but I doubt even the rookies are. But I think a bright future.
Yeah. I think I like taking a dart throw on Polk late. I mean, I think some signs are pointing to him being the wide receiver 1 over there. I think Pop has similar upside, being Drake May's favorite target when he comes in down the road. I think I would personally advise to stick away from Ramondre this year. I think Gibson is as shitty of as a running back he is a pass catcher. I mean, he was a wide receiver in college and converted. So I just assume Gibson got brought in and got paid to be a pass catching back, which is what he is. So I think, especially in a PPR format, that takes away from a lot of Ramondre's upside.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I like Polk as a bench player. If he's going to be the one there, I mean, he has to be rostered.
Yeah.
Jacoby's a serviceable game manager. He'll get some work. Then you never know. Baker might be one of those like late season waiver wire pickups that take you home.
Yeah.
So some good names to know for sure. For sure. I like Hunter Henry too. As another like tight end desperate play.
Yeah.
Hey, it's better than Hayden Hurst,
It's true.
So for the AFC East, what are we thinking? I mean, the first couple are probably known, but I'm gonna go with the Dolphins. This will finally be a year where they just like they'll lose in the playoffs still, but they're gonna dominate the season. And I've got the Bills.
Not the same as last year.
Yeah, but they're like this could be the season where we're all gonna be like Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
And then they'll blow it again. But I think their offense is gonna be stellar again gonna throw for 5,000 yards. So Finns, Bills, and then I'm going to go with the Jets. I'm going to say the Jets are actually going to be really competitive this year, and then the Patriots still rebuilding.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. Oh, this is tough. I think I'm gonna go Dolphins first as well. I think this is the year that I feel like they've just put such a good team together, and if everybody goes in healthy this year, I think they're gonna come in at the number one. And then I'm gonna go a little controversial. I think the Jets are gonna come in at number two. Um, I don't know if I actually think that, but I'm gonna go with it because I want to see. You know what I mean? Let's see what Aaron Rodgers can do. Then obviously Bills with them figuring out. I mean, it's just an unknown year for them, and then Patriots are rebuild. I don't see them. Yeah, definitely fourth.
Yeah, I got Bills first still in the
Yeah.
division. I think that's no second guesses that to me. I think Bills first. And then I'm gonna go Dolphins second, Jets third. I think Rodgers is gonna be a little disappointing. I think what Dan said about his like game manager timeline, I think that's what we are going to see. And they'll still win games. I think they'll still be good. I can see them still getting double digit wins. But I just don't see the Jets upside compared to the Dolphins. So yeah. Bills, Finns, Jets, Pats.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar, but I do Bills, Jets, Dolphins third, Pats fourth.
Yeah.
Uh, I think Josh Allen is elite enough to still carry that team. I'm in the boat of Keon Coleman coming in right away and surprising people with being more polished than they think he is. Jets, I was kind of out on Rodgers for a while, but I think he has a huge year this year, and this is kind of like a homer Chargers take, but I think Mike Williams is going to be pretty decent this year. I think he'll be perfect for Rodgers.
Yeah.
Dolphins, I just can't believe in every year now. It seems like the same thing. And the Patriots, I really like, but I do think they're going to be bottom of the barrel, just for rebuilding sense.
Yeah, with a bright future ahead.
Yeah.
Such an interesting division too, because as a Patriots fan, just dominating it forever, and then just
Yeah.
having it. You know what I mean? It's
It's
just
so weird to say.
yeah. But
Thank God. Thank God it's over. All right, so those are the NFC and AFC East divisions. Again, loaded with QB studs, probably the first and second to end the year. We'll see. Tua, beast, good upside. Lots of great receivers. Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. Some sleeper guys like Devontae might be back in the one. Jalen Waddle. And then some top-tier running back play. Brees Hall, Saquon Barkley. And then some other guys that could be coming on and help you win a league. James Cook, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. Exciting division. Next week we'll get into what do we have left? We did West, East, we did North.
Yep.
Now all we have left is South.
Yes, sir.
So next week we'll go over the Southern teams, and then we'll get into some other random topics. Next week we'll be touching up on the South, which I'm excited to go over Falcons and what's going on there and some other teams. So thanks for tuning in. Again, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Deuces.